take to pay off the minimum balance on $12,000 worth of credit card debt. I'm Jill Horner. This is Comcast Newsmakers. With me is Joan Reading. She is president of Credit Counseling Center. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So if an average family has something like $12,000 in credit card debt and they are paying that minimum payment, paying that minimum balance on a monthly basis, how long does it take to pay off?
About 30 years. Never mind the amount of interest they would have paid. So that
just that $12,000 balance, that doesn't include the interest over that 30
years?
The
whole thing would take about 30 years.
30 years.
Right. Never mind how much interest they would have paid, which I don't really know the calculation on. A lot.
A lot is the answer. You say credit cards can give us a false sense of security. What do you mean by that?
I see a lot of people relying on credit cards so that when they have an emergency, they'll say, oh, well, I have a credit card. I'm like, well, you need money. A credit card is a fabulous item. And again, I don't have a problem with using credit cards if you pay off the balance every month. That's the way you use a credit card. But when you start carrying a balance and then the interest starts building up, you don't realize that that item you paid, say you bought a sale item and you paid $50 for that item, by the time you paid it back, it might be $150 for that item. So where did the sale piece go? So my question for clients is to be very clear about when to use plastic, and it really is to use credit card when you're out and about, you don't have money for an item that you want, and as long as you pay it off at the end of the month, that's fabulous. When you start accumulating balances, that's when you get into trouble.
So you're not saying not to get credit cards at all, but to use them in a way in which they are intended.
Right.
But is it important for us to establish credit?
It's very important to have credit because you need credit to buy a car, to get a mortgage in the future. It's just as long as you're clear to not carry a balance. When you start carrying a balance, then you start paying for a lot of fees and interest over and above that item that you purchased. And I see a lot of clients then not building up a savings account, so they're using their credit cards for when they have an emergency. I hear that very common, that when I suggest they probably get their credit cards out of their wallet for a while or give it a break, and they'll say, well, I need that for an emergency. I said, well, you need money for an emergency. And a credit card is not money. It's fine if, as I said, if you're out and about and you're stuck, but you got to make sure that you'll be able to pay off that balance.
If someone does get into that situation where they have thousands and thousands of dollars in credit card debt and they are struggling to pay it down, is there help available? How can your organization give us advice, give us tips in order to get that balance down and really make some other financial decisions like how to save?
Right. The first thing is to take the credit card out of the wallet. That's the first thing, and recognize that there's an issue. Take a look at all the credit card balances and see what's out there. We also then have the client come in and review their spending habits. We want to get a realistic budget on paper, a realistic view of what you're spending, what's valuable, what's not, a list of non-essentials, and then figure out the best way to pay off that credit card. And we do have plans in place that people are successful and pay off all kinds of levels of credit cards from $40,000 to $140,000. We've had those success stories over the last 20 years. So it's possible. You just need to get very real about what's valuable, and it's you. That's important.
We just have a short time left, but credit cards come with a lot of information when we get the bill or get the application in the mail. How important is it to read that fine print when it comes to things like the interest rate?
It's very important. It's funny. It's a common question of people ask me, what's a good credit card to get? I'm like, the interest, if it's a high interest card, who cares as long as you don't carry a balance?
And that really, you say, is the bottom line, to pay that bill on a monthly basis so that you can look to things like creating savings.
Right, absolutely.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
We've been talking with Joan Reading of Credit Counseling Center. I'm Jill Horner for Comcast Newsmakers.